Hello everyone, my name is Ian, the part-time Dungeon Master, and welcome back to D20 Sundays. Today is about a very interesting NPC that I had created. One that I had no intentions of ever becoming, essentially a staple in a campaign. This NPC was essentially something I rolled up, threw at the players, see how they'd react to it. Supposed to hang around for a few sessions, and then disappear, because that's kind of their purpose. And instead, they became the party mascot. So, the NPC in question was named Filla, a half-goblin, half-halfling, who was very vague on the details of her lineage, as she really didn't really know herself, nor did she really care. All she knew that she was essentially from a goblin tribe known as the Fire Speakers, and that she herself was an apprentice fire seer, and was going to become the oracle of her tribe until her tribe was essentially wiped out by another tribe. The party themselves were essentially dealing with the goblins. Sure, they were, overpowered to deal with these goblins, but they decided to deal with them anyways in the sense that they figured, we're in the area and, might as well take care of them now versus, having to deal with them later. So they storm through and, take care of all of the goblins very easily. And while they're essentially going through the treasure rooms, they find Filla chained to a wall. And they're like, well, why is this particular one chained to a wall? And, they start asking the goblin. And the one goes, can she even speak common? And she replies, yes, I can. She states that she was the reason why the chieftain has one eye, or had one eye, because they had killed the chieftain before they got to her. She had gouged it out when he said that she was to marry him, and so she was locked into the treasure room until her mood became more accepting of the idea. Yeah, fat chance for that. But she also stated that she was now homeless and tribeless, and had nowhere to go. And Dakota, being the barbarian, who was of the Shawnee people, for the Pathfinder world, that is essentially the Native Americans. They are very proud, strong warriors, and Dakota himself was from one of the Hutch clans that was like, yeah, we're all about that personal freedom, so we're going to free this little child thing, and none of you are going to tell me otherwise. Which the party didn't really, object to, as Filla offered in exchange to give them a fortune, or, tell their fortune, because that's what her abilities were. She was able to have small glimpses into the future, but she could never really control it. It just more happens, and then her mind would wipe out the fortune completely, to where she has no idea what she told you, and that's just kind of the way I rolled her up. But she also had some fire-breathing spells and burning hands that she could do, and that was about it. She could, cast burning hands, breathe fire, and that's it. No other abilities other than the uncontrollable visions. And the party decided, okay, we'll take her back with us and figure out what to do with her later. Let's at least get a reward and see about purchasing that one keep that we saw that's been abandoned forever. So the party, go and, starts doing that. And it's around this point, it was around this point that while they were essentially, they realized, okay, we can buy the keep, or at least buy it, but we can't fix it up because we don't have the money. So they start taking other jobs, because they wanted to buy the keep and make it their own base to work out of, and essentially hire other mercenaries to do the lower end jobs while they go off and do the higher end jobs, trying to accrue the most money as possible. One of them had this great idea of essentially starting their own crime campaign, or crime world, and anyways. With that, though, they took Filla with them, because they're like, well, we can't just leave her in town, she's part goblin, they're probably going to kill her. Yeah, she's part halfling too, but, we'll figure something out. But they take Filla with her, and through that, those, few adventures that she essentially helped them with, very minor things here and there. She was good at climbing. She was good at sniffing out secrets and all that jazz. She got hit once. She got hit once. I want to say by a lance or something. And she went down. Like, she almost died. And the party started freaking out. And that's when they figured out she has no hit points. She only had, like, low double-digit hit points. That's it. Because she was a child, essentially. Yes, by Goblin standards, she is technically a young adult. But by Halfling standards, she's still a child. And that mixture of the two races kind of interfered with her growth. But nonetheless, the fact it remains that she just did not have the hit points in order to be in combat, especially considering she could only cast 2 things and then she was done. She didn't have cantrips, she didn't have anything else. That's all she could do. The only other interesting thing about her was the fact that she was partially immune to fire, in the sense that when they made camp, she slept in the fireplace, because her body had these etchings of runes all over it that essentially gave her fire resists 10. So any damage in Pathfinder, that means any fire damage under 10 is just negated. She just did not take the fire damage. If it was over 10, then she took the damage. And that was pretty much it. That's all she had. And they started freaking out. It's like, okay, we cannot take Filla with us on these adventures anymore. She is not fit for this. She is not a fighter. She is not for combat. But also at the same time, during these short little missions that they took, these jobs that they took, she gave them small fortunes as far as predictions. And like I said, she'd give the prediction, but then she'd just forget what it was. She had no idea as to what the prediction was. She could not remember it. One of which she told them to beware of the Black Lance, for the Black Lance the Black Lance would end their life. And then made the player just a little bit paranoid. It's like, okay, what do you mean? And Phil's like, what? But then, after them doing all these jobs, them, building up the keep and, making it pretty much usable, Filla then started essentially staying at the keep full time. They didn't take her with them on adventures. And before they left, she had essentially found a secret stash area where it was essentially where they would hide away like barrels of alcohol or anything that was currently illicit or prohibited by law, and she turned it into her personal room. She had gotten fabrics and pillows from all over, most likely stolen, they figured, but minor things that no one's really going to miss. And she had decorated out this small area, as well as stolen all the silverware from the keep to where they had to buy new sets of silverware, because she'd steal the silverware and then turn it into jewelry that she would wear by using her fire breathing and then bending it. But it was just, things like that just made her more endearing to the party. And by this, I had no intentions of her staying any longer. I had no intentions of her staying up to this point. I intended her to disappear on one of their jobs, but they just liked having her around so much. But they go off and essentially do another thing that they believe is part of the the main campaign, which was finding more out about this Well of Souls that they've heard some about, and the Black Blade that one of the characters, I want to say it was Edgar's character, Ulrich. Yeah, it was Ulrich Draken, who had picked up this strange black blade that whispered secrets to it, and essentially gave him great power, but at the cost of his sanity and soul. And, the players were dealing with him. They met with a tiefling who spoke with a small southern drawl, and a couple of my players hated the way he spoke because it reminded them of something, and they're like, oh god, I hate it when he speaks. But the tiefling, he'd always introduce himself. He's like, oh, my name's Ariel. Oh no, I ain't bad. I'm a good fella. Yeah, I'm a good fella. None of them ever catching on that a good fella is in regards to a mafia. as the Godfather movies and so on, where it's like, he's a good fella. Ariel, whose name itself is an anagram of liar, worked for the local mob back in the town that they were originally from, and essentially one of the jobs that they did screwed over that mob family. In fact, it was a job that Filla helped them on because they'd found a stash of weapons and drugs because Filla had a vision as to where it was, and they went and dug it up. But Ariel helped them to an extent until he finally was like, okay, I can't take this anymore. He got really pissed off at one section of it, and essentially called Dakota, the Shawnee barbarian, him and his people backwater and, inbred and other things, and then started attacking the party. And they killed him outright, but before he died, he made a threat that, their little friend back at the keep most likely is, no longer amongst the living. So they're like, oh, hell no. So they rush all the way back to the keep and find that Filla had been missing. That she had gone out at one point, but, she had been missing. And, they search high and low for her, and they eventually find her because they get a small green ear in a package. And they know it's Filla's. And so they were like, okay, the mob has her. And they want their money. So they scrounge up all the money they have, and they go to meet them, they go to their house where they were told to meet up at to get Filla and trade off and everything. And the players, they were coming up with some of their ideas, like how to kill every single one of these people as quietly as possible, without the guards noticing, without anyone else catching wind, and not losing their money and not losing Filla at the same time. And then the trade-off happens, and one of them was like, okay, Dakota, go get Filla. And the mafia, the mob's like, okay, she's in that room. So Dakota goes in, and she finds this little halfling, half-goblin body on the ground that's beaten and bruised and looking like she's been tortured. And Dakota loses it. He just fucking annihilates the closest standing person, which unfortunately for the one NPC was one of the mob people. Because Dakota used essentially a two-handed war maul known as an Earthbreaker. It's a big hammer with spikes coming out of it. It does both bludgeoning and piercing damage. And Dakota was stupid strong. How strong was he? He was strong enough to paste that poor fellow in one hit. And I do mean in one hit. He pasted many of them as he went on a barbaric rage through the entire friggin' house, or the entire mansion. And the party was like, yeah, we're going with this. It's out now. And a whole battle breaks out. And they capture the mob boss. They permanently cripple him. Dakota smashed one of his legs. And finally he's scooping up Filla, and he's running to somewhere to get her healed. And he's like, the little one is broken. Make her not broken. And he was threatening to kill, the clerics, fix her. But I really liked that campaign because it was just, it was kind of a silly thing that me and a few friends were playing. But I really liked Filla because I had no intentions of her being so important to the party, and in their eyes at least, to the point they were like, okay, she could be really useful even outside of combat with her abilities of fortune telling and all that jazz. But the fact that they would willingly go to what they at first thought was a trap anyways, with all of their money, and planning to murder every single one of these people just to get her back, and then finding her almost on the brink of death, and then murdering their way through the whole place anyways to get revenge. That was a real big surprise to me. But at the same time, it taught me that, sometimes the NPCs that you don't expect to have a lasting impact on your party has some of the best impact on your party. And in fact, I remember 2 of the party members wouldn't talk to me for like a week afterwards because of that. It's like, you hurt Filla. And it's like, oh, but I'm sorry. It was very hard at times to get role-playing out of that group, too. So, them doing this, it was one of the best role-playing moments that I'd gotten out of them, too. So I was really happy with that. Anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next D20 Sundays. Laters.